This is the RetroFlag handheld controller for Nintendo Switch. It's compatible with the original and OLED model of the console, and it's got an unmistakable GameCube aesthetic to it, borrowing the best features of one of my all-time favourite controllers without compromising the Switch's standard control layout. It looks awesome, and it comes packed with a whole load of intriguing features such as Hall sensor joysticks, swappable buttons, rumble vibration and motion control, all of which made it an instant purchase for me. So I've had it for about a week now and I've been using it a lot. There's so much to love about this controller, but there are also a few things you might want to know before you consider buying one yourself. So in this video we're going to take an in-depth look at what could potentially be the best Switch controller on the market today. Hi and welcome back to the shed. I'm Joe Bleeps, and in my experience third-party controllers have always been the lesser option when it comes to gaming. The cheap ugly additional pad that you pass on to your unfortunate player 2 while you thrash them at Mario Kart or Street Fighter. Unless you're me. Anyway, I lose at multiplayer games no matter what controller I'm using. Anyway, when it comes to the Nintendo Switch, the official Joy-Con controls do actually leave a little to be desired. The tiny buttons, lack of a D-pad, small analog sticks, and they're prone to drifting. As a result, there's loads of decent looking third-party Switch controllers out there, all vying for our attention, but it's hard to know which is the best one to go for. As you'll know if you're familiar with this channel, I'm a big fan of Nintendo's GameCube and its controller. I personally think this is when Nintendo were at their purest, creative best in terms of games, hardware design and innovation, and I love the controller's ergonomics, aesthetics and layout, particularly those grey and yellow thumbsticks and that big green A button. In terms of more modern gaming, you'll also know I'm a big fan of the Switch Lite. Having previously used the original Switch, I've always found the ergonomics of the Lite to be a big improvement, from the comfort of the grip to the solid feel of that one-piece build, the responsiveness of the buttons and the inclusion of a D-pad. It's been my go-to portable console since its launch, and I've barely touched my original Switch since, despite the lack of rumble or a TV docking option. That said, I've been playing the remastered Metroid Prime recently, and on the tiny screen of the Switch Lite it's often hard to see what's going on, so I took this as an excuse to finally invest in an OLED Switch, specifically this special edition Pokemon release with its branded Joy-Con set. Now, although the OLED screen is unquestionably beautiful and I love this Pokemon styling, I can't help but miss the comfort of the Switch Lite when I'm playing for long sessions, and the feel of the buttons just isn't quite as good to me. That slight wobble of the controllers where they're attached on the console, it does bother me a little. Couple this with the fact I don't really want any harm or serious wear and tear to come to these lovely little Joy-Cons, and I knew it was time to invest in a separate controller. Now, I already have Nintendo's Pro controller, which is superb. However, I wanted something for handheld gaming, as this for me is the main appeal of the Switch. There are lots of options out there, notably Hori's split pad compact, which I almost bought, and it's also available with some nice Pokemon stylings too. However, as soon as I saw pictures of RetroFlag's gorgeous GameCube style controller, I just knew I had to have it. I know of RetroFlag from their Raspberry Pi project cases, such as this awesome Sega Mega Drive style case I've got, or the Game Boy style portable G-Pi cases that for some reason I've never got round to owning. I know they've got a good reputation for quality products and creative designs, so without doing a whole lot of research, I just took the plunge and ordered one from Amazon in the UK as soon as I could find one. So I paid £53.99 for mine, but they seem to be steadily available on Amazon now for £49.99. I'll leave a link in the description. I believe they've been officially available in the US for a while now, and they're likely a bit cheaper without the added cost of importing. So it looks great. It promises some really awesome features, but does it deliver? Let's take a look. So in terms of packaging, it's functional but minimal, with a 2-colour print on a white box with no inserts and a protective bag keeping the console safe inside. It does the job, and it's nice to see a fairly sustainable approach to packaging, especially when you're essentially buying a big lump of plastic like this. There's a tiny instruction leaflet that helps you get set up, and well, that's it. The product itself feels really good from the moment you get it out of the box. It looked great in the pictures I'd seen, but in the flesh it really is gorgeous. The translucent purple plastic is spot on, and the quality of finish is excellent throughout. Well, almost. Rather than having two separate controllers like the Joy Cons, RetroFlag have opted for a one-piece design, which really does make the whole Switch console feel a lot more solid, much more like the feel of the Switch Lite that I'm used to. There are two holes on the rear to accommodate the rear speakers of the original console. The OLED model's got speakers on the front, so that's not an issue. It's got a well-considered design with a neat fit to make the controller and the screen feel like one single console. There's two neat little overhangs to hold the unit in place, a USB-C plug with a pass-through socket for fast charging, and a thin foam layer inside the back to give a snug fit with no wobble and less risk of damaging the back of your console. Important if you've got one like this with graphics on the back. So all of this makes it all the more annoying that they've seen fit to include two sprung metal clips to hold the console in place once it's pushed in. Not only that, but the clips are flat and fairly sharp on the edges. There's no movable catches or locks. It literally needs forcing in and out. Not a huge amount of pressure is needed, but the problem is that the sharp metal rubs along the edges of your console, and no matter how carefully you close your Switch in place, you're going to end up with scratches. It's such a shame when you see how much care has been put into the rest of the design to prevent any damage to it. It is a minor gripe, I know, but it really has bothered me. And if I'd known about it before buying, it might have given me pause for thought. I appreciate that most people won't be bothered by a tiny scratch that's out of sight, but, well, I'm not most people, so I figured I should let you know. That said, if this is the absolute worst thing I can say about this controller, you might be able to anticipate that there's a lot that I really love about it too. So much so, it's quickly become my favorite way to control the Switch. And yes, even when that's compared to the Pro controller, it's that good. One big selling feature of this particular unit is the Hall sensor joysticks. These rely on magnets as opposed to physical contact, and as such, they will never drift. That is an instant selling point right there, and I have to say that in actual use, these joysticks are superb, super responsive, absolutely no dead zone. They offer just the right amount of resistance without feeling too tight, and the traditional GameCube concentric circles and yellow C-stick feel authentic and comfortable. I really can't fault them. It's got built-in rumble and motion control without the need for any separate batteries. It does this by drawing power from the console itself, which does mean your battery won't last quite as long, but it doesn't seem too power hungry, and compared to needing separate batteries or charging, I'd say this is the much better option. There's also the fact that you can plug in your charger through the USB-C input, so you can carry on playing even when the battery gets low. Speaking of the charging port, it supports PD fast charging, which Google tells me stands for power delivery, which enables your device to take on more power in a shorter amount of time. Now, it all sounds very fancy, but this is the default method that the Switch uses for charging. So the pass-through basically allows the charging to function as normal, which is no bad thing. As for the built-in rumble, it's worth noting that it's not HD rumble like the Joy-Cons and the Pro controller, but from my gameplay experience so far, it's actually really good. Maybe not as subtle as HD rumble, but it's very responsive without ever feeling like an unwelcome distraction. I've played loads of Pinball FX with this thing, and the rattling of the ball, bumpers and flippers, they're extremely satisfying, immersive, and they're always in perfect sync with the frantic pace of the gameplay. It's really good. The motion control, it has to be said, isn't as good as the original Joy-Cons. Up and down works great, but side to side is a bit weird. It works by tilting the console instead of pointing it in different directions. Now that's because when you connect this controller to the console, the Switch detects it as a wired Pro controller. You have to make sure you enable this in the options before setting it up. Now this means that the console thinks it's connected to a Pro controller, and it detects the movement input in the same way, which in the case of the Pro controller is a tilting motion. So there's not really a way around that. Another drawback of using this connection is that when you're using a wired Pro controller, the NFC input is disabled for Amiibos, which is probably the main reason why RetroFlag chose not to include Amiibo functionality in this controller, because, well, they can't. While I'm speaking of drawbacks, I'll get the rest of them out of the way now, because there's actually very few. There's no infrared camera, but to be honest, the Switch Lite doesn't have one of these either, and I never noticed, so it's not something I've ever actually missed. I've done a quick search online, and it seems it's used for 1-2 switch and labo, anyway. That's pretty much it, so no great loss there. When it goes into sleep mode, you can't wake it up by pressing the home button. You'll have to press the power button instead. It's not an issue at all, really, but if you've got that muscle memory of using the home button to wake up your Switch, it might take a little bit of getting used to, and I suppose it's not quite as easy to press as the home button. Anyway, this is another one where it's a limitation based on how it works. See, it draws power from the console, so while the Switch is in sleep mode, the controller is off, so the home button won't do anything until the console's powered on, so it kind of makes sense. And the last thing that's an issue, and in this case it actually is one that could have been easily avoided, is that if you want to change your game cartridge, you have to remove the console from the controller, because you won't be able to open up that little trapdoor cover where the games go in. Now, they could have easily left a bit of a gap or a cutout, but no, you're left with having to at least nudge the console partially out from the controller to be able to access your game cards, which, along with those sprung metal clips, is one of the rare times when the design and the user experience of this controller feel a little bit clunky and poorly thought out. One thing worth bearing in mind if you own the original Switch and not the OLED version is that it's actually slightly narrower. The OLED is wider, and the one-piece design of this controller needs to accommodate that. So if you put the original Switch in there are very slight gaps down the sides, just next to the control areas. It's not a huge issue, but it's certainly something worth knowing in advance if you're thinking of getting this controller and you've got that original version of the Switch. Again though, if these are my main gripes, you can see that this really is an absolutely brilliant piece of kit. It looks really, really good. It blends the aesthetics of the GameCube and the Switch to create something with both modern and retro appeal in equal measure. The build quality, the finish, the comfort, they're all excellent, and the ergonomics of the design are really well considered. It's super comfortable to hold for long periods of gaming due to its shape and its surface texture. The solid build and the excellent quality of finish suggest it's well worth the asking price, and the controller makes the Switch OLED feel much more of a premium handheld console than the Joy-Cons do, at least in my opinion. One more feature to consider is the turbo button that's included on the lower left of the controller near the screenshot button. For turbo, press and hold it and then press the button that you want to sign into rapid fire. You'll get a little vibration to confirm when it's engaged, which is a nice little touch. For auto turbo, you do the same, but you double tap the button instead, and to deactivate, just press and hold turbo again and push the assign button again. You'll get another vibration to let you know it's back to normal. Now you can do this with A, B, X, Y, L, R, ZL, ZR, and even L3 and R3 when you click down the little thumbsticks, so you've got pretty comprehensive options. However, the thing I really like about the turbo button is the way you can use it to swap buttons on the controller. So if you're playing something used to from, say, Xbox, where the A and B buttons are in different positions, you can set it to that layout. Or if you're playing a game where the controls feel maybe a little bit counterintuitive, you can rearrange them to make your own adjustments. It's a clever addition that's nicely implemented. You simply press and hold the two buttons you want to swap at the same time, and then you press the turbo button again. You get a vibration to confirm, and that's it to swap them back. Press and hold the turbo button, and then you press the two buttons at the same time. The buttons themselves are excellent. The face buttons are a great size. I love the color scheme and the convex shaping, and the indentations are really comfortable even for extended periods of play. The sticks, as mentioned before, are superb. Since its recent release on Switch, I've been playing a lot of Session, which is a really great skateboarding sim. I've got it on Xbox already, but the prospect of playing such a great game on a handheld, it was just too much to resist. It's a game that's got quite nuanced dual stick controls, and I've been struggling to consistently execute certain flip tricks and grinds, and found manuals infuriating with the Joy-Cons. But these larger Hall sensor joysticks, they're an absolute delight to use, maybe giving even more of a feeling of control than the Xbox Series X controller I'm used to playing this game with. The shoulder buttons are also great, with L and R bumpers being nice and big with a satisfying click, but they never really get in the way of the ZL and ZR triggers that operate more on a pivot with a little more movement and a little less click, which helps when you're used to the feel of an analog trigger. And even though it gives a digital input, it's another key difference with Session. The triggers are used for steering, but once I got used to it, it's not presented any issues at all, and it's very easy to control with this pad. Now, there is also a very nice D-pad that appears to be modelled on the Super Nintendo or N64 D-pads, which is great news, as the tiny D-pad on the GameCube controller is the one thing I always felt let that controller down. Now, although the shape of the D-pad is great, I was initially a little concerned that the silicone membrane made it feel a little, well, mushy, and that it might not be very responsive. But then I tried it out with some scrolling shooters, some Game Boy games, and some Super Nintendo games, and I take those concerns back. It is comfortable, responsive, and it really does give a lot of control. I am way better at Tetris using this controller than I was on the Switch Lite even. One of the best D-pads I've used on any controller in a good while. If you're on the lookout for a good controller to use with your Switch, this might be for you. And if you have a fondness for Nintendo's consoles of yesteryear, such as the N64 and the GameCube, then this controller is perfect for your needs. So that is pretty much everything I can think of that you might need to know about this fantastic controller. If there's anything I left out, please do let me know in the comments. I don't think it will come as any surprise to you that I really like this controller. It's not perfect, and it's definitely beaten by the Joy-Cons in some aspects, as I've outlined in this video, but on the whole, this is now my main controller for the Switch, and for me, it makes a much better playing experience than the Joy-Cons, which in terms of third-party controllers, it's no mean feat. We've come a long way from those lovable abominations I used to use with my Super Nintendo. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Whether you're new to my channel or you've been here before, and if you enjoyed this, please show your appreciation with likes and comments, or subscribe and sign up for notifications if you'd really like to help me keep growing this little channel of mine. So this is Joe Bleeps signing off from the shed. There's some more videos popping up here if you want to keep watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.